dona, 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 don, dona, 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 don. Streit dos kelbos op per boyer, welche hastig seiner Kopf, wo's gegen zu seiner Fegel, wo's gegen zu seiner Schwab. Lacht der Wind im Chorin, lacht du, lacht du, lacht, lacht der Tage ganzen, Mittelhabernacht, Donna, 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 Donna. Bidne Kälber tut men minden, und men schleppt sie und men schert. Wer stott Fliegel flieht heraus, ist bei keinem nicht kein Knecht. Lacht im Wecken, lacht und lacht und lacht. Lacht der Obertage ganzen, Mittelhabernacht, Donna, 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 Donna.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here with us today to commemorate Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. I'm Talli Dippold. I'm the new CEO of the Holocaust Center, and I'm thrilled to see you all here today. I'm delighted to be leading the museum today and as we get ready to write this new chapter for our institution. 84 years after the events of Kristallnacht, we know that incidents of bias and hate speech are on the rise in the US and specifically here in Florida, and that there are still those who oppress others for their race, creed, or color, and their desire for self-determination and a better life. We know where such racism and prejudice can lead. Before we get started with our program, I'd like to take a moment of silence to honor our beloved founder, Tess Weiss. Tess passed away on Sunday, October 23rd, but her vision and her legacy live with us each and every day. We're going to honor a moment of silence. Tess's vision for the Holocaust Center from the 80s is more relevant today than ever. Her vision to create an educational facility where everyone could learn the importance of speaking out against prejudice of any kind is critical at this moment in history. The center teaches visitors about Holocaust history and the ultimate consequences of hate to promote a more inclusive society where everyone feels respected. I'm honored to be here this afternoon in the company of community members and of our remarkable Holocaust survivors. We should never take for granted that here in November of 2022, we have survivors here to share their stories for us to hear and learn from them. And we're gonna honor them here with, and honor the 6 million victims of the Holocaust with candlelighting. So we request that when we invite our survivors to come up, if they would like to have their children or grandchildren join, please do. And then if you can please remain up here for one moment, we see it as such a remarkable opportunity to share a le door vador moment from generation to generation. So we're very grateful to have survivors and their families here. Suzanne Schneider. Hal Gottschall. Thank you. Inga Cole. Harry Lowenstein. We know that it's getting crowded on here, but we like it on purpose to show the remarkable generation to generation. Please come join us. Abe Pizam. Helen Greenspun. And we'd like to invite Henry Gottheim and his family. We love that. Are there any other Holocaust survivors here with us this afternoon? We'd also like to ask if you are the child or grandchild of a survivor and you're here in the audience, if you would like to stand and join us as well. We would love that. Thank you. If you're comfortable, children or grandchildren, please join us. Thank you. Come join us. Thank you. This highlights the importance of the work that we do and the concept of from generation to generation, le door vador. This keeps our work so important, and we thank you so much for being here and for representing the community. Thank you all so much. Of course, I would love to.
So on your program next, we were supposed to have Cantor Roebuck, but has an engagement that he had to attend. So we have graciously invited Cantor Bryce and Rabbi Kay to join us next.
Es brennt, brüderlich, es brennt. Oi, unser Orem steht und nebig brennt. Diese Winden mit ihr Gosen, Reisen brechen und zerblosen. Und die Besen werden Hutsen, als schein brennt, und steht und kocht, also zu, mit der Leg zu tent. Und steht und kocht, also sich, unser Städtel brennt.
Es brennt, brüderlich, es brennt. Oi, unser Rodem Städtel nebach brennt. Böse Winden mit ihr Gosen, Reisen brechen und zerblosen. Starke noch die wilde Flammen, als schön brennt. Und steht und lugt, also sich mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und guckt, also sich unser Städtl brennt.
Es brennt, brüderlich, es brennt. Euse Kennkolle kommen, der Moment brennt. Unsere Stadt mit uns zusammen, soll euch Wolken Flammen bleiben soll wie noch a Schlacht. Nur postisch wird Wind, und steht und kocht so mit verlegter Hand. Und steht und kocht so sich, unsere Städte brennt.
Es brennt, brüderlich, es brennt. Die Hilfe ist nur in euch allein gewährt. Ob das Städtel ist euch teuer, nehmt die Kelim, löscht das Feuer, löscht mit euer eigen Blut. Bewegt, als ihr das kennt, steht nicht Brüder und also sich mit verlängter Hand. Steht nicht Brüder, löscht das Feuer, unser Städtel brennt.
And now in your program, you have descriptions of bios for our speakers, but I would like to invite our panel members, Harry Lowenstein, Suzanne Schneider, and Hal Gottschall to come join us. We know that one of the most powerful experiences is to hear from a Holocaust survivor. And this afternoon, we're very fortunate to have 3 of our local survivors who have joined us with their families.
Move it just to the right. That's okay.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So we're going to start off. We have different questions for each survivor, but we wanted the opportunity to get to hear and learn. So we're going to start with Harry, and we would love to hear, Harry, what were your experiences during Kristallnacht?
At the age of 7, I remember quite clearly that my father came in the bedroom, kissed me goodbye, and my sister and my mother, and we did not see him for 6 months, 6 weeks. He went and he was arrested and sent to Buchenwald concentration camp. While he was gone, being somehow in a village where we had cattle, we had horses, who do you think was the responsibility to feed them? Well, it took all day to do that. And also, well, anyway, the water had to be carried from a well. It wasn't just you turn it on and it runs. It wasn't that easy. It was quite a big job for a young fella. So what happened during that time? Several things happened. We were expelled from school. How would you feel if I said, you, and you, out, you can't come in anymore? Very devastating for a young child. Also, in the morning, I walked by the synagogue, and guess what? The Torahs were laying outside, half burned, and I do not know what happened after that to them. Very devastating. What else happened? We were told and given a Jewish star with the inscription Jew on it, or Jude, and we had to wear them. We no longer could walk on sidewalks. You were considered like a rat, like vermin. It was very devastating. Anyway, so since we could no longer go to school, we had to go to school, and we found this school 100 kilometers away in a large Jewish children's home. And we went there most of 39, 40, and part of 41. In 41, they closed the school, and we were sent home. In December 41, we had a notice or a letter stating you're being resettled to Riga, Latvia. So Riga, Latvia, what was in Riga, Latvia? It was the Riga ghetto. You want me to stop there? And because otherwise I'll be an hour and a half.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to have many opportunities to still get to hear from you, but thank you for sharing your experiences of that night. Suzanne, can you tell us a little bit about your experience living in hiding?
Just that, start over there.
Sure.
Okay. Apparently, my father had found this lady who was one of his patients. He was a physician. Her little granddaughter was born they thought blind. So she went to see, my father was allowed in and out of the ghetto. And she met him in the street and she said, "Doctor, I would like you to come and see my granddaughter. She's blind." So he went that night and he put some salve on her eyes. And the next day he came back and she opened her eyes. She was 2 months old. And after that, the lady said to him, "Well, is there anything I can do for you to help you?" And he said, "Would you be willing to hide my wife and my daughter?" And that's exactly what happened. So we ended up in this one. My mother was there first. He managed to get her out of the ghetto. I don't know how. He must have bribed somebody. And I was with a nanny, but she didn't want to stay out of town anymore because that's where I was. She came back, brought me back to my father, who was sitting on a park bench. And the lady came and she took me from my father and took me to my mother. And we were hidden in a one-room cottage with a straw roof, a thatched roof. And we were in the chicken coop, which was attached to the house itself. She had a wall with it. And we slept, every night, I remember coming out of the chicken coop, we were all walking like this so nobody would see us. I was very small, but of course, I imitated my parents. And we went and we climbed into the oven. They had an oven where they baked their bread once a week. And what my father had done apparently he went there when he examined the patients, whatever, he brought in a brick in his medical bag and he bricked it up there was about this much space between the end of the oven and the ceiling. And he bricked it up and he put steps inside the oven. So we took the step, we slept on top of the oven. And we were in the chicken coop all day long. And with the chickens, those were my playmates. And the amazing thing was, which was unheard of, I mean, it was amazing, but we were right across the street from the Gestapo. And who would have thought that there would be Jews hiding right there, right behind their noses? And they brought so much food because the lady's daughter was gorgeous. She looked like Marlene Dietrich. And they were all bringing us stuff and bringing food and all. And that's where we were hidden until the Russians liberated us. In March 1944, we were liberated by Russians.
And how long had you been in hiding at that point?
I'm guessing because I was young, but I'm guessing because I remember being there in the summer. I was being there through Christmas. And then we were liberated in March. So I figure 9 months, about 9 months.
Remarkable. And can you tell us a little bit about the process of how your family found the righteous individuals who helped you during that time and then becoming righteous among the nations?
Oh, you mean once we went to, okay. I had done the film with Steven Spielberg, which was kept in all the Yad Vashem and in Washington and all that. And I was contacted by the Israeli embassy from Warsaw. And would I like to see the descendants of the family? Because my father kept in touch with them in Poland. And then I lost the contact, so I didn't stay in touch. Anyway, of course, I was immediately anxious to do it. So my daughter and my grandchildren, everybody, we all went to Krakow. And we were really had a wonderful experience meeting the family, the grandson, who was actually named after my father, and the great-grandson. And there were, of course, the Israeli embassy honored them. And we had the American ambassador there. And it was a beautiful ceremony. And there was another group of survivors who were also honored there at the museum. So that's
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You raised a few really important comments, including the testimony from the Shoah Foundation that we will have available. We're very honored that we're in partnership with the Shoah Foundation, so we will be able to honor that testimony, and the importance of the righteous Gentiles, where a tree was planted in honor of that family at Yad Vashem. So that's really remarkable. Thank you. Thank you. And Hal, can you share a little bit about your experience passing as a Gentile during the war and living with a Christian family?
Well, first, good afternoon, everybody. When I was 4.5, initially we had gone, we were captured and we went to a place called Holland Schambrouw. And we were luckily able to escape, but Mom realized that she couldn't handle myself. My father had died a month before I was born, and she could not handle me and what was going on. Consequently, she became very, very friendly with a Dutch nurse who was also a member of the Dutch Underground. And she said to her, I can help you take care of your child. And that was me. And I went to live with my war parents. My mom did not know where I was, and she had lost her husband, who died a month before I was born. And she had lost her mother, who came from Germany to Holland to live with us and take care of me, and the Nazis grabbed her off the street. So I came to live with these people who were the most wonderful people that you could possibly imagine. They treated me as one of their own, and they actually treated me better because I was the youngest, and the youngest normally gets favored. And if there was anything to eat, I got it. And during those years, I remember one incident where my mom had told me, do not ever tell anyone that you're Jewish. So one day, I think I was about 5.5, and I'm playing in the big courtyard in front of our home. And a person came over to me and said, are you a little Jewish boy? And I turned around and I said, what's Jewish? And I explained it to my war mother, and she was so grateful, because quite candidly, if a family gets caught hiding a Jewish child or anyone Jewish, the penalties are extremely severe, including death. And again, I have to tell you, during those years, a number of things happened, and I consider myself a very, very lucky man. I give you a couple of quick examples. A bomb dropped through our house. We were living in a 3-family house, and I was sitting in a chair, a large overstuffed chair, collecting whatever I was, and all of a sudden I went into the kitchen, and within 10 seconds later, we heard this large noise, and a bomb had dropped through the ceiling all the way through, right through that chair, and there was about this much dust. So that was luck number 1. Luck number 2, we had to go to a funeral, and half the family went one way and the other family went the other way. And what happened to the family I was not with, a bomb dropped and they were all gone. My foster parents were exceptional people. They helped Jews in any way that they could. My father, used to hide Jews in his milk cart on the bottom, and he used to take his 16-year-old daughter with him to sneak the Jews out of the country. And the 16-year-old later told me that her job was to flirt with the German soldiers so that they wouldn't pay too much attention to the cart. That's about all I can add about that particular part of my life.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And can you tell us a little bit about the process of helping assisting the rescuers to become righteous in that case?
Very much so. Until 2000, I worked. And in the year 2000, it decided that they had to be recognized. So there's a whole bunch of things that you have to do. And you have to make sure that it's not a fraud, because what happens is the people who are recognized become Israeli citizens, honorary citizens, but citizens. with all the right thereof. So I went to Holland, and I went to visit my foster brother and sister at the time. My foster parents had passed. And I asked if he could possibly help me and give an affidavit, and he certainly did. But I needed more. And out of the sky, we met 3 or 4 neighbors who indicated that they always knew that I was a Jewish child. And they wrote affidavits. And we then took the entire family, my family, and we took my foster brother and his wife and my 2 foster sisters. And we had a wonderful ceremony at Yad Vashem where they became righteous Christians. And just to tell you a little bit about that kind of a ceremony, what they do is they not only have the people who are being honored, but at the same time, they normally have 1 or 2 classes, Israeli students, who are there to witness, because they, like other young people, really don't understand what has happened. And they witness the ceremony, and they normally have someone from the Knesset that's there. And it's a very, very meaningful thing. And I think I answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Harry, we want to come back and hear some more details. So can you share some more information about what happened at that point?
Well, in December of 41, they put us on a train and they locked every compartment. Every compartment was packed to capacity or more. So some of them slept in the package, in the racks, and wherever you could find a space, you used it. The most important part of the voyage was, it happened during Hanukkah. Now we're close to it, but it always reminds me of it. And somebody was very great and brought candles and lit candles on the train. And they, after a very short period, they started to sing Mo Oso Yeshuati. And guess what? The whole train joined in. And it was a tremendous thing. I always can hear it yet today.
Incredible. Incredible.
Okay, we might go on.
Absolutely.
All right. Upon arrival after 3 days of train, we arrived in Riga, and they marched us roughly about 5 miles into the ghetto. And in the ghetto, they assigned us to a building. And normally, I would say the apartment would be large enough for 3 or 4 max. And we were 21 people in there. Naturally, we were all relatives. It was aunts, uncles, cousins, and so on. And the first thing what happened, I had an older aunt who was a widow, and they're the first ones to assemble at a certain point. And guess what they did? They put them onto a moving van, quite large, and they pumped the exhaust gases into it. And I don't have to explain what happens after that. That was the first one. Then they also took the 17 to 24-year-olds, and they took them to a beach and eliminated them. And just continued like that. We did have a school system going, we had wonderful teachers, but one by one they eliminated all the classes. So after a while, we didn't have any school any longer. And so what does a 10, 11-year-old do? We played soccer. I actually became pretty good at it. And I played for many years afterwards. Well, anyway, in August of 43, roughly, my father and I got notice that to report, and we were sent to the concentration camp Kaiserwald. And in Kaiserwald, my father only lasted 6 weeks. He became ill. He was returned to the ghetto, and the ghetto was liquidated the 13th of November, 1943. And roughly at the same time, they had, can't think of the term, a selection process. One goes to the left, the other one goes to the right. And I was lucky at the time. I worked at the garage, even so I was littler than most of them. All the rest of the individuals hit me in the middle, and we were able to march out. So that saved me from being sent wherever to. And I worked in the garage, and one time they had a selection process. I climbed in, there was a stack of tires from here to the ceiling almost. And I climbed into it and stayed there for 3 days.
Wow. Wow.
No amenities of any kind of food. I also remember, well, let me go back a little bit. While my father was still there, I saw a piece of bread laying on a bunk. And I said, this is silly. And I took the bread and brought it to my father. Here's another piece of bread. We had our bread. He says, where did you get it? From there and there. I says, well, you take it back, apologize to the individual, and I got one through on the face I still feel today.
Wow.
He says, if you want to steal, you steal from the masses, not from an individual.
Wow.
Well, I followed his advice, and I saw a truck with bread on it, and I took a bread, and it was bitter cold in December. Naturally, we weren't dressed very well. And they caught me, and they took a hose and put it in here, and I was soaked from top to bottom, almost frozen, but I survived. And several incidents like that.
Well, we're very, very fortunate that you survived, and we're fortunate that you're here to share your story, and we're fortunate that the community has the opportunity to get to learn from each one of you. You're all remarkable in the time and effort that you give to ensure that our next generation understands what occurred and what happens when hatred and bigotry go unchecked. I'd like to give you each the opportunity to answer a question. We have many different age groups here, which is remarkable. And we've talked about the concept of le dor vador. So I'd like to have you each discuss either why it's important that we commemorate Kristallnacht, and to add a message that you have for the future generation, many of which are here today, that they can take out with them into the world and tell about an opportunity to spend some time on a Sunday afternoon with our local Holocaust survivors. So we're going to start first with Suzanne from that side. If you could share why it's important for us to commemorate Kristallnacht and a message that you have to future generations.
Well, Kristallnacht was, of course, an important day to remember. However, the whole few years under Nazi occupation should not be forgotten. And that's why I'm always ready to speak to students and children, and because it's becoming a past now. And a lot of people are denying it, that it never happened, which is absolutely amazing to me. And I don't know, I was telling the story to this morning that I was working as a teacher on Long Island, and this young woman was hired in the school district to be a music teacher. And she had some sort of a banner on the back of her car. And one of the students, a senior, questioned what it was. He didn't ask her. He went to his grandfather, because his grandfather was very active in Jewish reparations and stuff like that. He was American. Anyway, he went and asked, and the father called ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and they told him that it was a society that denied the Holocaust. So the grandfather called the assistant principal of the school, and she was questioned, and she was fired the next day, of course. But this is not so rare. There's still people. How can you deny something that there are so many witnesses, so many films, so much literature about it? But this is why I feel an obligation to talk about it. And my grandchildren, my children went to Poland with us, and they saw what was going, we went to Auschwitz, and they could see it. Although, of course, personally, I felt that Auschwitz was too clean and too cleaned up, really. But I guess you have to do it when you bring tourists over. But it wasn't the real thing, except for the cases of eyeglasses and hair and all that. But again, I was not faced with any of that because I was in hiding. So luckily I survived with both parents. So that was a big plus, very unusual to happen. But because of that, I was able to lead the rest of my life because I had my parents always with me. So that, but I do remember that my mother was wearing a little bag on her neck with strychnine in it. And I was wearing one. I still remember what it looked like, with black stripes, like a satin piece. And I was a non-eater, very spoiled brat, an only child. Every day I would have a lesson. When I put this in your mouth, you swallow it. And fortunately, I never had to swallow it, but they wore it, my father, my mother, and I, just in case. If we got caught, you take poison and you die. That's it. You're not going in the truck. And that was it. Right after liberation, again, we were liberated by the Russians in the part of Poland that I was in, which is Ukraine now. A lot of the German officers were caught in the movies because it was so unexpected when the Russians came in. Anyway, the next day, we were all in the central square. I came from a very small town in Poland, and there were the German soldiers in uniform hanging in the center of town. And we all went there to spit at them. And I remember, I was 7 years old, but I remember that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, Suzanne shared with me earlier that anytime Stephen calls her for a request in the schools or an opportunity to speak in our community, she always says yes immediately. So we're so very, very grateful that you share those messages with our community. So thank you. And Hal, we would love to hear, why is it so important to commemorate Kristallnacht and a message to future generations? And I'm going to share what you told me earlier before you speak. Hal is here joined by his family members, and he was sharing how remarkable and how lucky he is to have such an incredible family and so much support.
That I am. But I think Kristallnacht, not only Kristallnacht, but the entire situation has two different lessons. One, the horror of Kristallnacht, the horror of what happened during the Holocaust, is one side of a message and should never be forgotten and should be retold to every generation. And it must never, ever, ever can the deniers be the ones that win? But there also is another message. And that's the message that is so very, very important to me. And people call people who help other people not bystanders, but upstanders. It's a new word I learned. And when I take a look at my life and my people who helped my family and who helped me survive, I look at it in terms and say that, yes, there was horror, but we should never, ever forget that there were decent people who risked their lives, who risked their families. And those are the people who have to be celebrated.
Yes.
And they can't be ignored. Now, Yad Vashem is very important, but at the same time, it's the actions that we take that's important. I know this, and I often wonder whether I would have had the courage to do what my war parents did for me. And it bothers me, and I think about it, and I don't know the answer. But the reality is there were thousands of people who helped Jews. Now, some did it for many, many different reasons. But in the end, the people who saved these people did a tremendous amount, not only for the Jews, but for humanity altogether.
Yeah. I have an interesting story to add to that. My cousin, who was also in the ghetto, he had lost both parents in one of the first actions. He was 16 years old. And when my father went into hiding with us, he made arrangements for him he was 16, to go to a small hamlet, one of my father's patients, I don't know, whatever, a barber who would take him, that my father had notified the barber that his nephew would be coming. And so my cousin followed the stars and went into the village there. That was before GPS, by the way. The stars were the GPS in those days. And anyway, he comes to this little village and he meets a young woman walking her dog. So he asks her, would you know where the barber's house is? So she points it out to him and he goes over and he knocks on the door. And the barber says, yes, I know who you are, but I cannot hide you. So there's my cousin, 16 years old. He knew where we were, but he knew there was no room for him. And knock on the door, and the young lady comes in and she said, is there anything I can do to help? Now, she didn't know my cousin at all. And so the barber tells her the story that he cannot keep him, he cannot hide him. She said, well, let me go home and ask my father-in-law and my husband, who my father was our patriarch, what they think. Well, she comes back and she says, come with me. She hid him in the hayloft. And now this was a mother of 3 children, family. They would have been all killed if they had been found that they were harboring total strangers. So this is why, anyway, to finish the story, because there's a good ending to that. Aside from the fact that, he was saved and he stayed in touch with them for years. He lived in Corsica in France. But anyway, he asked her once, he said, why did you do this? You could have all been shot. She said, I was hoping that if one of my children had been in the same situation as you, that somebody would be there to help her. And then it turns out that the barber who wouldn't take her was hiding 30 people in the cave. And they were the ones who said to him, no more, you cannot bring anybody else. Voila.
Incredible message.
That's an amazing story.
Thank you, incredible. And Hal brings up a great point. One of our education programs is called Upstanders. So we definitely love the opportunity to hear about upstanders. And Harry, we would love to hear from you. Why is it so important for us to commemorate Kristallnacht and a message that you have for future generations?
Having experienced Kristallnacht, and it was very devastating. Unfortunately, somewhere in the world, it's happening. Somewhere in the world, it's happening. Might not be the same type, but there is revolts and various what do you call well, genocide, all various different types. And unfortunately, we should not never forget where we came from and where we're going. It's very important that we remember. There's one little statement I would like to make, which has got nothing to do with this. For my 11th birthday, my mother traded, I'm sure it was a piece of jewelry, for one egg. She made a boiled egg for me, and in honor of her, an honor to her, I today have an egg every day just to remember her.
That's
But anyway, never forget that there are cruel people out there and we have to conquer them.
Thank you. Thank you. And Harry has a special place in my heart because he was the first local Holocaust survivor that I had the opportunity to meet here when I started. And I hope that for you all, as for me, each time I get to hear and spend time with you, it's such a remarkable experience and one that none of us will forget anytime soon. So I want to say a huge thank you for your courage and your determination and coming here to share this with us today. And I want to also share that today is a very important day. We've resolved to remind ourselves of the enormous evil of which mankind is capable and to remain vigilant. But I also want to mention, as Hal said, that today is also a day that we remember and think about how capable human beings are for good, and that we focus on that as well, and that's part of the work that we do every day to ensure that. Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, is a painful reminder of what can happen when hate is allowed to flourish. Today, we mourn every victim of the pogrom and those who perished during the Holocaust. We honor those who survived and rebuilt, and we rededicate ourselves to preventing repetition of such brutality anywhere. And I would like to take a moment to thank all of our survivors that are here, their families, and also that it takes a village to pull together such an event. So I want to thank my remarkable team that really came together to change location, change dates, notify everyone, and all of you for being here and for understanding the importance of bearing witness, and our remarkable community partners, the Jewish Academy of Orlando, Temple Israel, Congregation of Reformed Judaism, Congregation Ohev Shalom, the Interfaith Council, Hillel of Central Florida, Shalom Orlando, Israel American Council, and Kabuki and Draper. And none of this would be possible without all of the remarkable partnerships that we have, and a very special thank you to our board members who support us along the journey. So thank you all so much for coming here, for listening, for bearing witness, and for hearing from survivors. And I'm going to pass it on to Stephen.
Okay, we're just going to close out the program today. If the members of Koram will come up, and I'll have the survivors thank the survivors for coming up today. Thank Harry, Hal, and Suzanne, if y'all like to come back to the seats, or if you want to sit here. I got it. Thanks. This is going to conclude our program for today. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful guests, our panelists, and all the Holocaust survivors, their children and their grandchildren who came to join us today, as well as thank you to everyone else who took time out of their day to commemorate Kristallnacht. On your way out, if you'd like, feel free. We have an exhibit in the back. It's called A Piece of My Mind, which has looked at many local community leaders and asked the question, what does peace mean to you? Feel free to take time to look at the permanent exhibits or to go to our back room and look at our temporary exhibit while it is still here. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope you have a wonderful weekend.
What's going on this week?
I didn't. Oh, yeah. I don't. Yeah. Sure. Oh, sorry. I told him. But don't tell me. Yeah. Yeah. You get see my work.
What time were you in Poland? No, when you well, a town spot.